Hello, welcome. In today's video I'm going to answer one of the most popular questions I receive. Matt, how do you scan your film negatives? First I'll show you my old approach using a Epson flatbed scanner, and then stay with me, and thanks to Valoi I'm now going to show you my new approach for scanning 35mm film, which lenses may be best for your scanning your film, and for fellow Leica shooters which camera might be best. I know I'm late to the party on this, but stay with me and you can learn from my mistakes. Hey guys, Matt here from MrLeica.com. Okay, first let's cover Epson flatbed scanners because they are better for certain applications. So I used to use the Epson v800, the one at the bottom. I need to sell that if anybody wants one. And then ever since I've been using the v800. I think I'm using a slightly different holder from memory because it can hold 4 strips of 6 images, so 24 negatives in one go. And I think standard is only 2 strips, but double check if you're looking at Epson v800 scanners. I use Silverfast software. I found that slightly better for black and white than standard Epson software, and I've been completely happy with the results, except for how long it takes to scan each negative. So I set the timer, and this is how long it takes to scan one negative at 3200 dpi, which is what I do for all 35mm negatives. And so if you shoot, say, 6 rolls of film, it pretty much takes more than 1 day just to scan the film without even doing the processing afterwards. If you follow me on Instagram or say Flickr, all those images which are film have been scanned this way with the Epson v800. I'm totally happy with the results. I just wish it was slightly faster, so for that reason I started doing some research for a faster approach for 35mm scanning. After much research, I quite like the look of the Valoi Easy35, so I reached out to the guys and said, I'd love to test your product if you want to send me one, basically something like that. So they kindly sent me the Easy35. This is what it looks like. It's a box that basically clips onto the front of your lens via a few extension tubes. It's USB powered, so you don't need any batteries. And then you can adjust the color temperature on the other dial. All you do is feed your film in from one side, it comes out the other side, and there's the light on the inside that basically illuminates your film. It's a really neat 3D printed bit of kit, and then the unit is supplied with different length extension tubes and different step rings, so hopefully this kit will pretty much fit any lens from, say, micro four thirds all the way up to full frame. There you can see the different steps ring sizes from about 39mm all the way up to maybe 67mm from memory. The next thing I needed to do was work out which lens might give me the best possible images and what would kind of allow me to get close enough to scan my film. So this is my setup before we get into the details. So all you need is obviously a camera, lens, and then the Easy35 scanner attached at the far end. I was then using my large format focus loop. I was zooming in on the camera LCD and then using it as like a grain finder, like you would in the darkroom for any of you that do darkroom printing like I do now. Once the image looks sharp and you're happy, it's ready to start scanning. Now the camera I'm using is a Leica CL, which is an APS-C camera rather than my SL, which is full frame. For the simple reason that if you think about it, APS-C is a crop sensor, which means it's going to use the sharpest center portion of any lens. This means you won't get sharpness fall off towards the edges of your frame, assuming that you're using full frame lenses, not APS-C lenses. The second reason for using the CL was it meant the negative that I was photographing filled the full frame rather than being a smaller portion in the center, which is what I was getting from the SL. Other YouTubers have demonstrated that more megapixels doesn't necessarily mean better 35mm scans. However, if you want the maybe best Leica camera, say for digital scanning, I'd probably use the, say, Leica SL3. It's a 60 megapixel sensor, but then if you use the APS-C mode, you get the benefit of using the sharpest portion of any full frame lens, and you're still going to get maybe 40 megapixel scans compared to 24 megapixels that I'm showing you in this video. Then it's just a matter of feeding your film through the Valoi Easy35. I was using the dust remover clip-on attachment on the right hand side, which you can get extra, and I had no problems with dust whatsoever. You can see I used my large format camera on the right hand side to hold the film up so it wasn't touching the floor. And then I love the fact that you can pull through a whole roll like uncut, which makes it much quicker than having to cut your negatives. Although you do then have to cut your negatives after to put them in sleeves for archiving. There you can see the little duster attachment on the right hand side, and then using a 55mm lens, it more or less filled the frame with border included. You can see the white border, and I just tried to make sure each frame was level before I took the shot. I had the light source on full power, and I love the fact that you can plug it into the mains via the USB charging port while you're actually scanning, so there's no risk of it going flat halfway through scanning. Now the next thing for me to work out was what was the best lens to give me the sharpest possible negatives. I've got 3 different macro lenses, so I was going to test each one of those. First, the Nikkor 55 versus the Nikkor 60. Both these are micro lenses or macro lenses in like common language. One's autofocus, one's non-autofocus. Both are very sharp and both give me great results on Nikon F cameras. So first, find the sharpest f-stop for your particular lens. For me, f5.6 was sharper than f8. Next, I wanted to compare the Nikkor 55 to the 60, and I think the 55 is slightly sharper, but pause the video to check yourself. Okay, now to prove that f-stop really matters, here you can see my first scans. I was very happy, but I thought they looked a bit more vintage than I would get from my flatbed. And the reason is I'd knocked my settings to f22 by mistake. When I then rescan them the next day at f5.6, you can see a huge jump in sharpness. For that reason, I'm now scanning at f5.6, not f22. Here's another example, and if we zoom in, you can see there's a big difference. It's much softer from diffraction at f22. Okay, next, how does a Leica macro lens compare to a Nikkor macro lens? So I move the 60 aside, keep the 55, so now it's 55 Nikkor versus 60 Leica Elmarit R. I wasn't sure which was going to win, but I know that the 55 is amazing, so it's going to be a tough competition. Okay, so here you can see my setup. I'm using a close focus M to L adapter, Leica M to R adapter, Leica R lens, step tubes, step ring, extension tubes, and then the Valoi Easy35. Quite a monster setup, as you can see. You might have spotted this on Instagram on one of my reels. Okay, Leica R first, 5.6 versus f8. I think 5.6 is sharper, but feel free to pause the video. Next, Nikkor versus Leica R. They're both very good, but the Nikkor gives me a slightly larger image, being a 60mm. And so I'm going to go with the Leica R 60mm for the rest of the photos in this video, unless mentioned otherwise. Okay, next I wanted to work out what's the best way to process my raw file to get the best possible negatives using the Epson versus the Valoi Easy35, Lightroom and other alternatives. So first, Epson versus Valoi. They both look quite good, but the Valoi photo is slightly larger. If you zoom in, great image quality from both. Very happy with either. Here you can see another example. Again, the Valoi Easy35 gives me a slightly larger file, so in theory better resolution. Comment below which you think is sharper, but for me I think the Valoi Easy35 has the edge. Next, I want to compare processing a negative versus a positive. Processing a negative gives you limited tools and then therefore dynamic range, but if you export as a TIFF and then re-import as a positive, then edit, you can get much better results. What about Negative Lab Pro? I think most people that scan their own film with a digital camera use Negative Lab Pro, but for me I think you need it for colour but maybe not for black and white. I wanted to test if I needed it for black and white, and from my results I really don't think I do, so for now I'll use it without. Okay, so what is the conclusion? First of all, I've been pleasantly surprised. I've always been very happy with my flatbed scanner, except for the speed of the scanning. With the Easy35 my scanning is now 21 times faster, 4 seconds versus 86 seconds per photo. There's less dust on my negatives if I keep the setup clean, and the image quality is as good or better than what I was getting from my flatbed. The only drawback, as the name suggests, the Easy35 is not suitable for 120 film or 4x5 film, so I'll continue to use my flatbed for those larger negatives. As from today, I'm now 100% converted to now using the Valoi Easy35 scanner. I was very happy with my first attempt, but I've got a lot to learn when it comes to the processing. I'm going to edit positives, not negatives, to give me more control over the final edit, and I'm going to add a vignette to get rid of the inverse vignette from the light source. Again, a huge thanks to Valoi for sending me the Easy35, and as always, a huge thanks to my amazing patrons.